What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Hot Stove right here on the channels as it is day one of the MLB Winter Meetings. I know, so excited. Nothing really happened. But, but, we always got some news to talk about as always, and we'll get right into it. So hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channels if you're new to the channel. And we're going to say what up to Chris. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Good football day here. We wanted to start after the Packers Bears, so we do apologize for any delay. But we have some stuff to talk about. I mean, there's been not any concrete official moves, but there's a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors out there surrounding our New York Mets and around the league in general, right? The Toronto Blue Jays made kind of a shocking move, and they could be pivoting in their bullpen too. And we're here to talk about it all. So we appreciate everyone being here. As always, make sure to subscribe to both channels. Make sure to hit the thumbs up buttons, and it should be a good conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Andy Martino had a lot to talk about on his first couple of comments from the winter meetings in Orlando, and we're hearing some news about Framber Valdez with the Mets. The Mets looking at other top relievers on the market, and it doesn't. The name ain't Edwin Diaz. It is it's Suarez and Fairbanks, which is again is just under Diaz, but it wouldn't be too much of a bad option. But I think we should get into the reliever situation right now before we get into Valdez's situation because obviously everybody wants Edwin Diaz. I don't think there's anybody out there that doesn't want Edwin Diaz back with this team. The fifth year seems to be a sticking point for not just the Mets, but it seems like the Dodgers as well. Who knows with the situation with Rodriguez, getting him off the roster for the Blue Jays, which leaves an open spot for the Blue Jays to, spend crazy. And that could be a desperate team like they were with Dylan Cease to spend on Edwin Diaz and give him that fifth year he's looking for. Because if the Dodgers were willing to give him the fifth year or the Mets, Edwin Diaz would be a Met right now, or Edwin Diaz would be a Dodger right now. So I don't think the Dodgers are as heavily favored as they were 2 weeks ago. And I don't think the Mets are budging when it comes to the fifth year. I think they will go a fourth year. And, Diaz is clearly waiting for that fifth year. And you know what? If there's a desperate team out there, and you just said about it with Rodriguez letting him go and leaving that roster spot available, and the Blue Jays are known to have money to spend. Edwin Diaz, could he go across the border to the country up north and be a Toronto Blue Jay, Chris? And that's worrisome within itself when it comes to losing Diaz. One thing for sure it would be okay, I would guess, is that he's going to the American League, right? He ain't going to the Dodgers, he ain't going to the Phillies, the Braves, or anybody in the NL that you would have to worry about. But he wouldn't be on your team, and that's a blow within itself. And with Suarez and Fairbanks is, it's a consolation prize. It's fine. It didn't feel like you win the sweet, you won the big prize, but it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if you go into that route. So what are your thoughts on the situation that's going on right now, where it's basically at a stalemate right now with the Mets and Diaz, and the Mets are talking to Suarez and Fairbanks right now?
I just think that it's going to be a whole merry-go-round between the Blue Jays again and the New York Mets as it pertains to the top option with Edwin Diaz. I think it's actually important. Hold on one second as we pull this up, because this Yariel Rodriguez releasing was really shocking. This was a guy that we were looking at last offseason as a potential bullpen candidate. He signed originally a 5-year deal with them worth $32 million. He played out the sole season with them in 2025, and then he gets released. So, and it's not really that big of a payroll hit. I mean, $7 million, $7 million, and it was going to be $8 million in 2027. It's kind of shocking. And so just like that's probably what a lot of people are speculating about, is like making some room for that top end reliever going into, their organization this off season. And we know that and we've known that, right, per Heyman, that they're going to be in on Edwin Diaz. The recent rumors as well, since we did our last live stream, is that they are also in on the market of Robert Suarez, and they're looking at Robert Suarez also. And so I just think that, honestly, with the Mets and Andy Martino saying it specifically, like you just said, checking in on Suarez and Fairbanks, whoever does not end up with Edwin Diaz, I don't know if the New York Mets are going to actually give in to the demands of Edwin Diaz, given the other options in Fairbanks and Suarez on the market. If Robert Suarez, and we've talked about this scenario time and time again, if the Mets end up with Robert Suarez with Devin Williams instead of Edwin Diaz, are we going to be crying about it? Probably not, right? Like, we will be sad that Edwin Diaz, who we've come to know and love, is not on the team, but Robert Suarez is probably the next best option. But it really does seem like the Blue Jays are doing everything in their power to go ahead and get that back end solidified and go after the biggest name, which is Edwin Diaz, especially with this Yariel Rodriguez move that they now made. If I'm the Mets, I'm looking at Yariel Rodriguez and I'm like, this is a guy that I wanted last offseason. He posted decent metrics. I know he has walk issues, but I'm like, for the front end of the bullpen, that's a good guy to go after right then and there.
Yeah.
And then you can go ahead, if you really want to explore the back end of the reliever market, if Edwin Diaz is not an option at that point because you have it in your brain that he wants 5 years and you don't want to go 5 years, your next best option is Robert Suarez. Yeah. And you know what? Fairbanks, I'm sorry to say, I know the numbers are the numbers. I don't think that Fairbanks is on the level of Suarez and Diaz. I think that he is a close second in terms of, outside of those two guys. And I would still take him on this team in a heartbeat, but we've been adamant about wanting Edwin Diaz. And I think the biggest threat right now is the Toronto Blue Jays and what John Heyman said. I don't think John Heyman was lying when he reported that, because the Dodgers, it seems very far-fetched. It seems like the Dodgers are actually struggling because there's a report out there earlier today that I saw saying that unless they are able to move off of Teoscar Hernandez's contract and be able to trade his money off the books, then it looks like there's not going to be that many big free agent targets that they can go after money-wise, which is kind of shocking because it's like, this is the Los Angeles Dodgers, the kings of deferred money. How can they not make this happen, even with Teoscar Hernandez's contract on the book? So it's going to be a 3-team race. It's going to be a merry-go-round, but I think that's going to be the Mets versus Blue Jays. And this is kind of like the version of Mets versus Red Sox this offseason. And we'll talk about it with Pete Alonso and looking at each other in the eyes. Mets versus Red Sox for Pete Alonso. The Mets and the Blue Jays are looking directly in each other's eyes. Make the move for Edwin Diaz. Offer your best offer, and we will decide if we want to counter offer with that contract that you offer. And that's what it is. But I think that Robert Suarez also being on the market, that is a really good safety blanket for either of these teams, whoever does not come out with Edwin Diaz at the end.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting with Edwin Diaz, because, there's some players that just don't want to go across the border, right? They don't want to deal with customs and, stuff like that. And, Diaz is Puerto Rican. He's from Puerto Rico and all that. So, that is an issue. And I know people don't like, oh, he's making millions of dollars. You can just take a private jet from Toronto to, Puerto Rico. Yeah, but you still got to go through customs. You still got to go through all that nonsense as well. And he might not want to do that. His wife might not want to do that. So, I think the Mets would have the upper hand in that sense. But again, that 5th year, if Diaz is really serious about that 5th year, maybe he doesn't care where he goes. He just wants to get paid. It's probably going to be his final biggest contract, of his career, most likely. He might get a couple of 1-year deals when he's 34, 35 years old, 36 years old, but he ain't going to get this long-term deal once again. So I can understand him looking for that 5th year. But you know what? Yeah, with Fairbanks and everything, I know everybody ain't excited about Fairbanks, but I'm not, with Fairbanks and maybe Suarez or something like that, or you can bring back, a guy like Justin Wilson who put up good numbers last year with Robert Suarez. I mean, you have still a really good back of the bullpen, is something to always look at as well. And again, we talked about different pathways that the Mets can go where it's still a very good offseason. Again, you'll have your own pathway. I'll have my own. People in the chat will have their own pathways. But there's not a lot of pathways that you look at and say, you know what? It's a bad offseason. Like, that's the thing. That's what we talk about. Like, it's very hard for Stearns to screw this up this offseason. But again, it is David Stearns, right? He surprises everybody in the worst way. When he comes to player acquisition and what he's trying to do here. And again, we still don't know what he's trying to do, right? The Devin Williams signing is kind of I think it was a no-brainer type of signing. It's early in the offseason. He protected himself for a disaster of a reliever market that doesn't work in his favor. And he traded Brandon Nimmo for Marcus Semien. So it's nothing special yet. I thought it was a smart move for Devin Williams. I don't think anybody should be mad about that signing at all. And the Brandon Nimmo signing, I think if you notice, the later it comes, the later the trade, moves on with Brandon Nimmo, more Mets fans understand the trade more and more. The initial reaction was a little bit, hectic, but I think the Mets fans understood the trade in general and why it was done.
I think so going back to just to touch on this real quick, the Devin Williams press conference, the intro press conference that we saw, I look at that and I'm like, Devin Williams himself said, upon talking to the New York Mets before accepting this offer, he knew that there was a possibility of another closer. No matter if it was Edwin Diaz coming back or Robert Suarez or whoever, he knew that there was a possibility of a bigger name being signed rather than him, for him to be the setup man instead of the closer. And he had other closer role deals, at least 5 others that he declined per Will Salmon. And he still chose the New York Mets in that regard because he did have setup role experience in the Yankees organization the previous year after getting booted from the closer role. And so just the tone of the way that I saw that interview with, the 15-minute press conference that I saw with Devin Williams, and he also said, word for word, essentially, that the more fantastic arms you have in the back end of your bullpen, the better. And so I think that Devin Williams is expecting the Mets to go after at least one other high leverage arm to make him the setup man. That's what I got from that press conference when they introduced him as a Met. It was virtual, whatever. It lacked a little bit of energy, and it just seemed like there was another bullpen move coming that he was knowing when he accepted this deal, he's not going to be the closer, and he would be the closer maybe on some off-duty days where the closer is unavailable. So I think the Mets have something up their sleeve. I think that David Stearns does too. Is it Edwin Diaz? That's anybody's guess, because like I said, if the Blue Jays are offering 5 years, if they will offer him 5 years, I'm not really sure that David Stearns is going to make that panic desperation match because you have other safety blankets in Fairbanks or Robert Suarez on the market. At that point, it would just be up to Steve Cohen. Is he willing to step in and get the job done to match that offer? Because ultimately, we all know this has been played out before with free agents and pending internal free agents that Steve Cohen does have the final say. And we talk about fan favorites. One of them is Pete Alonso, and we'll get into Pete Alonso here in just a second. But another one is Edwin Diaz. Mets fans love Edwin Diaz, and why not? Because he has been very consistent for the New York Mets, especially since that 2022 season where he really exploded onto the scene in this organization, right? Yeah. And so I think that we both like Edwin Diaz. I want to ask you, Rob, given the backup options, would you give Edwin Diaz that 5th year? Would you, if that's what it came down to, knowing that Robert Suarez is already 34 years old, we know that Robert Suarez, metrics-wise, and the overall numbers is not Edwin Diaz. I think Edwin Diaz is the cream of the crop, number 1, undoubtedly on the market right now. Robert Suarez is a little bit of a step below, but does that step below warrant being desperate enough to give Edwin Diaz that 5th year? What do you think?
I think in David Stearns' eyes, no. but here's the thing, though. We talked about this on the last show we did, right? 2 years older, right? Was it almost 2? It's almost 3 years old, but 2 years older than Edwin Diaz. And you give him a 3-year deal, he's getting to 37 years old. While the 5th year, you get Diaz up until 37 years old. So that's where I don't understand the logic in it. Is the 5th year, is it just about the age that he might, you know, become worse over the later part of the contract, which, you know, a 3-year deal, there's no saying that Robert Suarez, the last 2 years of that 3-year deal, you know, he might be good this year, but in 27 and 28, he might be, you know, falling apart because of age. So, you know, there's a lot of conversation here when it comes to that. I think, to be honest with you, I think that if Robert Suarez wasn't on the market, I think the Mets would have gave Diaz and probably wouldn't have, you know, had this fight with him with the 5th year. To be quite honest, because we know when in 2022 you know, the Mets signed him November, like it was early, very early, it was like it felt like right after the World Series. So I don't think they mind. I know he was, you know, 30 or 29 years old, so I understand it was a couple of years ago, but I just feel like it's hard to think what Stearns is thinking here, because what happens if Robert Suarez signs a contract with like Toronto, like tomorrow or today? You know, now Diaz is like, haha, you got to give me that 5th year, because who's your closer? Devin Williams. I know that might shock a lot of Mets fans, but David Stearns is not going to have that emotional reaction like we will. Like if Robert Suarez signs with Toronto Blue Jays tomorrow, Met fans are going to start to panic because, hey, we don't have Diaz yet. We only got Devin Williams. And I would be really shocked, Chris, if Suarez or Diaz is not a Met. If they both go to different teams, I'm not going to say we're in trouble, because I don't think that's fair, because I think both bullpens are fickle. But you're losing out on top closers in the game. Devin Williams wasn't a top closer last year. I mean, he was 2 years ago, but there's no guarantee he can be that top closer again, because he was horrible last year. And not saying that I don't think he's, you know, he's finished. All his like metrics, all his like velocity, and, you know, spin rate on base on his breaking balls, off speed pitches, they're all where they were 2 years ago. It was just a bad year. So you could say, oh, Devin Williams will just show up and pitch well as a closer, but you also got to fill those gaps in the 6th, 7th, and 8th inning as well.
So the reason why I think that the Mets will land one of these names, and I think that I do think that Steve Cohen, especially leading this charge, David Stearns has full throttle control of what happens. I think we all know that. But I do think that there's going to be a degree of where Steve Cohen steps in. And the reason why I think they land one of these two names, and I don't even think that, you know, Pete Fairbanks is going to be an option, because there's a clear gap between Suarez, Diaz, and then Pete Fairbanks, although Fairbanks is still a really good option. And I wouldn't scoff at the idea of Fairbanks being paired with Williams, but I just wouldn't be as excited with a Devin Williams type with, you know, as opposed to with Edwin Diaz or Robert Suarez. Is that, you know, a lot of people talk about Williams. He wasn't, and this is where I'll kind of correct you a little bit, because he wasn't just an elite closer 2 years ago, because that was the 2024 season. Might I add, when the Brewers ended their season with the Pete Alonso home run in the wild card series, that was an injury season.
It was
for Devin Williams.
It was.
So the full sample size of when Devin Williams was actually more so of an elite closer was in 2023. So you're getting up until 3 years post when he was full sample size, that elite closer that you can be confident in. And so that's why I don't buy into the Mets signing him early to be their closer as a backup option. I think they signed him early to get that 8th inning roll out of the way, knowing that they will make a real effort at going out there and getting one of Suarez or Diaz. And that's why I said a couple of streams ago, I was surprised that Devin Williams actually signed as early as he did. Because if he signed later, I think Devin Williams would have had a whole lot more leverage to try to maximize his earnings and get more. I think Devin Williams in this market, after Suarez and Diaz signed, he could have got a 4th year. I really do think so. But I think that him signing this early with the New York Mets was an indication that the fit was there in the mind of David Stearns and Devin Williams, and that was established, that the role was already established, that he's going to be a setup guy, and that the Mets are going to get a closer They didn't promise him one name or the other, but they said, we will get a closer in here and you will know your role. You will be a setup guy for one of these names with the opportunity to close games when those guys aren't available. And so that's why all the context clues, I could be wrong. It could be a safety blanket at the end of the day, given the markets, but I really do think that the Mets are going to go full throttle for a closer with the names available left.
Well, the way David Stearns has worked over these first couple of off seasons as president of the baseball ops, he doesn't see it as a guy that, what he did last year or what he did the year before. Guys he signed, Griffin Cannon, Frankie Montas, Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, we go on and on here, Clay Holmes, aren't guys that were successful the prior year or the year before that, and putting them in totally different roles in Clay Holmes' sense. So the issue that I have, and this is again where I don't know what David Stearns is thinking here, and when Chris comes back, I'll ask him the question: what if David Stearns believes that Devin Williams can be 2023 Devin Williams again as a closer? Like he's played this game before with starters, with starting pitchers, with bullpen guys, with position players. I'm going to ask you, Chris, what if David Stearns is going through this philosophy again of, what? I know he wasn't good in 2024. I know he wasn't great in 2025, but he was great in 2023. And that's what we're trying to capture again, because he's done this with other players. And that is always, it's in the back of my mind thinking, what if he's thinking that Devin Williams is the guy, even though they didn't, promise him a closer role. But what David Stearns has done in the past with bringing guys in that have reclamation projects that haven't been good in a couple of years and making him, more of the pitcher, or make us believe and everybody else believe that he's going to be the pitcher of 2023. And that's what we're going to be focused on. Like, that is what I worry about, because I would have put it past David Stearns doing that and try to, hype up Dylan Ross as a potential bridge guy or a potential late inning guy for the New York Mets, along with maybe, a Fairbanks or Justin Williams or somebody else.
So first of all, if that's and again, we're assuming here, right? This is the hypothetical that you brought up. If that's the case, and what you just said, that is malpractice by David Stearns. That is absolute malpractice of the assumption that Devin Williams will return to form of what he posted over the correct sample size in 2023. You do not go ahead. I know. Listen, let's be honest. Objectively, I'm not saying this to be a New York Mets shill here by any stretch of the imagination, but the Devin Williams contract, if he is a setup man, given what he's posted in his career, is a really good contract structure. You got a steal there in terms of the AAV that you got him at, especially with the deferred payments. Now, if he ends up being the closer, then you can start to say, yeah, that's probably the cheap way out. The only chance, if Suarez and Diaz are both end up on teams that are not named the New York Mets by the end of this MLB free agency, that I will be first of all, I'll be pissed off at. I think we all will be, because I think that's a very big gamble to have Devin Williams close out ball games on the other New York team that he showed the first year in New York that he wasn't able to do, although he said it in his press conference, his intro press conference, that he's more comfortable with New York and he knows the lay of the land, et cetera, et cetera. That's fine. We don't know if he can close out ball games in New York. I'm under the assumption that David Stearns did not make this move having him be a closer in his mind. But if he did, the only logical explanation is what's happening in this starting rotation and trying to make room in this starting rotation, because you have the Kodai Senga trade rumors swirling. We don't know if he's going to be a part of this team or not. David Stearns, I think the New York Mets are definitely going to shop Kodai Senga. The only logical explanation is Clay Holmes, they're going to your bullpen and being one of the back end guys in your bullpen, which I don't see happening because I know that Clay Holmes wasn't the most reliable starter in his first year as a starter for the New York Mets, but I think he showed some signs of promise, right? In this 3-year deal, going into the second year of the 3-year deal that he signed with the New York Mets. I just think that with everything that the Mets have done, even going back to last season, Rob, last offseason, I don't think that the Mets and David Stearns can afford to get this wrong at the back end of the bullpen. I do not think they can. And I think that filling in the front end of the bullpen guys is a lot easier than saying, let's try to experiment in the back end.
Yeah.
I need to be sure about who my 8th and 9th inning guys are. You have Minter and Rayleigh coming back. I don't at that point, that's 4 names, supposedly 4 names. Right then and there, that's going to be in your bullpen. The rest of the 3 or 4 names that you put in the rest of the bullpen, I do not care who it is, right? Huascar Brazaban, Christian Scott, Dylan Ross. I don't care who else it is. You need to establish the back end, and then you have a plug-and-play system in the front end. And I think that David Stearns also understands that notion, or at least I hope he does. So I'm going into this winter meetings and this offseason under the assumption that David Stearns realizes that he needs that 1-2 punch with Devin Williams, and that Devin Williams alone as a 9th inning guy isn't enough. I could be giving him too much credit. I've given David Stearns too much credit before. Hopefully this is not the same case, because that would be, I wouldn't say it's irresponsible, because we would need to see how the season plays out. But I think given what happened in 2025 directly, it would be a very big gamble to take for David Stearns again. David Stearns took a gamble on the 2025 season with the rotation. I think that this is the season where he needs to stop taking gambles and start putting pen to paper on real roster moves to show that, show Steve Cohen that he's actually serious and putting a World Series contender out there on the field.
Yeah, again, I don't trust him until he does it. I just can't say that. I think that, you have that feeling, and I feel like because it was such a disaster that he had to change his philosophy a little bit. And, we haven't seen anything of that sort yet. Devin Williams was kind of it's a security blanket. So that wasn't like a, outside the box move for Devin Williams. That was kind of a security blanket type of situation. And the Brandon Nimmo thing just seemed like it was coming to a head, especially when he talked about run prevention, and it kind of happened quickly. So I'm not going to say he changed his philosophy, because he hasn't really done anything yet that is surprising as of yet. And, that's my concern, though, when it comes to the bullpen, though, is or in general with anybody. I just feel like, with all the possibilities for trades, free agent signings, this you can do so many different things to have good off seasons, that, to go in, bargain basement shopping for, high leverage relievers, or, relievers that might have been good a couple of years ago, is concerning. Same thing goes for the starting pitching. Like, there should be no reason why Clay Holmes is a number 3 starter in our rotation when it's all said and done. He needs to be a 4th starter. Clay Holmes needs to be a 4th starter. So that means you need to bring 2 pitchers in here that are top 3 pitchers. That is what you got to do. It needs to be one guy who's an ace, one guy who's probably close to or a number 2 or possibly number 3, and Nolan McLean. And then you go Clay Holmes, David Peterson, or whoever else you might have on this roster when the season is kicking off. That is what needs to happen in when it comes to the pitching area of this team. That is my concern. Like, there is, we've heard so many reports up until recently that the Mets are looking at 2 top starters. That's what they've been looking for. How they're going to do it? Is it both free agent market, or is it trade and free agent market? We don't know. And we'll get into the starting pitching in just a little bit, because I want to hold off Alonso for a little bit, because it's very interesting what's going on.
I know you want to talk about Alonso. It's itching at you, Rob. You want to talk about Alonso.
It is. And you know what? Everybody's reading the reports, right? Everybody's, I heard see people talking about it in the chat earlier. It's something happening here with the league with Pete Alonso. I'm telling you guys. I've been saying it for 2 years. It's not a shock. And MLB Network is kind of like shocked about it, which I'm not at all, and nobody should be. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But we kind of beating the dead horse when it comes to the bullpen here. I think that if the Mets don't have Suarez or Diaz, and those guys go off the board and they're on other teams, I think it's time to worry. And I honestly think that if he already fucked up the bullpen, let's say that Diaz and Suarez signs by the end of the winter meetings, and none of them are New York Mets, I think it's time to worry. Not panic, but worry. Because now you have an idea that Diaz might have got a fifth year. And hopefully, because he should be a Met if he gets 4 years. If he gets 4 years and he goes elsewhere, that is a terrible job by David Stearns. If you let Suarez go elsewhere because you screwed up the deal with Diaz, now you have to worry about, okay, is Devin Williams going to be our closer? Is Dylan Ross going to be a high leverage guy in this bullpen? Are we going to get Fairbanks? Is that going to be okay? Justin Wilson, guys like that, like it's not exciting anymore. It's not terrible, but it's not as exciting as it could be, where you could have on paper, a lockdown 8th and 9th inning that the Mets tried at the deadline with Ryan Helsley and Edwin Diaz. Didn't work. It was a good try. Nobody disliked that trade until it blew up with an 8 ERA with Helsley. But that's what should be happening here. It's too easy to do it with either Diaz or Suarez. And, it's just where we are right now. But until he does it, it worries the hell out of me.
With the report that the Dodgers are really, I'm not saying they're pinching pennies, but like there's already been reports from Dodgers beat writers internally saying that they're skeptical that they're going to be in the market of Edwin Diaz if he's going to be commanding a 4 or 5 year deal, right? So that the Dodgers are still there as far as we know, but as far as we also know is that they're unlikely. So between the Mets and the Blue Jays, besides those two teams, what other team is giving Edwin Diaz a 4 or 5 year deal? Like, what other sleeper team could just pop in and be like, I'm giving you a 4 or 5 year deal? Can anyone name one? Because I'm struggling to name one myself. To the AAV of his caliber, I don't see any. I do not know of one genuinely that would do it, and that I feel threatened by from a New York Mets perspective.
Yeah,
the Yankees are not doing it. The Yankees are not doing it. The Yankees have big issues. They got an ownership that, per Michael Kay, is looking to decrease payroll. So they're not even at the forefront of my mind. I don't care about the Yankees. They need to figure that out. Boston's not doing it. They got Aroldis Chapman. They've already got Aroldis Chapman. Yankees, yeah, don't even bring up the Yankees. They're not even in consideration here.
Yankees are trying to stay under 300.
Red Sox aren't doing it. It's Blue Jays, Mets. Again, unless Dodgers find a way to offload some other money, according to what their reporters are saying right now, they're not doing it. I don't see the market being extensive outside of the Blue Jays and the Mets. I'm sure there's one sleeper team that I'm not thinking about right now. I'm sure there's one that can make it happen. But I'm like, it's not an extensive market. It's really not. It's really not, Rob. Can you name one?
No, I mean, those are the teams. I mean, you always got to take consideration that the Dodgers are going to say, fuck it, and just do it. They've done it before. When people thought that it wasn't going to happen. I mean, Tanner Scott, there was no conversation about Tanner Scott to the Dodgers, and it just happened. I think we were live when it happened last offseason. I think we were actually on a hot stove, and that came off. We were like, oh my God, they got Tanner Scott too? Like, we were like, what? They just got Kirby Yates. And it was like, come on, they got Tanner Scott too? When we were talking about the Mets possibly going after Tanner Scott. So I don't think they mind spending the money. I think that, maybe they can offload a contract if need be. But I always worry about the Dodgers. I'm still skeptical about the Blue Jays. Not that they won't spend the money. I just don't know if Diaz wants to go to Toronto, to be quite honest with you.
You know what? I see this situation. I see this being a mirror situation, right? I think this Diaz situation between the Mets and the Blue Jays, when you have the options of Diaz and Suarez, one or the other, I think the Mets and the Blue Jays are looking at each other saying, you make the first move and we will decide if we want to counter. If not, we will go to the backup option. And I think that is the very equivalent of the positional battle between the Mets and the Red Sox for Pete Alonso.
Yeah.
They're looking at each other and saying, because the Red Sox are still looking at apparently Alex Bregman and trying to re-sign him. There's been recent rumors of them trying to go after Bo Bichette as well if Alex Bregman walks somewhere. The Blue Jays. This is a trio. This is like a triangle, by the way. This is a triangle. The Mets, the Blue Jays, and the Red Sox are all, believe it or not, in on the market of all of these players. And they are in a, you know that Spider-Man meme? I wish we had that Spider-Man meme like propped up here where it's just like pointing at each other and there's the three Spider-Mans that are all pointing at each other. This is what it's like between, by the way, anybody that's listening to this, please, if you can DM me a meme of the Mets, the Blue Jays and the Red Sox being in that spider meme, that would be awesome because this is what we're like embarking on right now, right? Blue Jays, Red Sox, Mets. Blue Jays are worried about Bo Bichette walking. Red Sox might be worried about Alex Bregman walking, but they are looking at Pete Alonso. Mets want Edwin Diaz. They're fine with Robert Suarez. They're wondering what the Blue Jays are going to do. They also want Pete Alonso, but they're maybe open, depending on what happens with Brett Beatty, to seeing what happens with Alex Bregman. Like, it's just a true merry-go-round, Rob, and I love it. I absolutely love it because they're all looking at each other, these big market teams. You know what? I think that the Blue Jays can be classified as a big market team. They want to spend like one. They're a big market team. They want to spend like one. They're a big market team. So I'm actually happy that this is happening. I think this is good for the offseason. This is good for baseball. And this provides David Stearns some competition, right? It's like nothing is going to be handed to you easy. And so this is going to really show us what David Stearns' plan is really about. And I like it.
And look, it's time to see David Stearns step up and be a big boy, right? You can't shy away and not give somebody an extra year because you don't want to. Like sometimes, again, how many times have we talked about it the last 2 seasons, right? With the Yankees with Max Fried, with Dylan Cease this year with the Toronto Blue Jays. They went the extra year. They went that extra money because they wanted the guy. I'm sick and tired of the New York Mets continuing to say, I want this guy, but I'm not giving him this. It's the stupidest conversation that 1 year is going to make or break your decision of not getting one of the best closers in baseball or the best player on the market at that current time. Like, there's no reason why the Mets shouldn't get Framber Valdez. I don't care about the 6th year. If that's the sticking point and you lose him to a team in the National League or just in general, it's stupid. I don't like you losing a guy on an extra year. Like, if you're going to give 3 years to, like, you're only going to go 3 years for Valdez and he gets 5 or 6, I can understand you don't want to give him 2 or 3 more years. I get that. But when it's a 1 year difference, I just don't understand it at all. And this goes for Pete Alonso, by the way, as well. Just so everybody knows that everybody thinks I hate Pete Alonso. I don't. Like, this goes for Pete Alonso too. And in general, with players that you want. Because clearly the Mets want Valdez. Clearly the Mets want Diaz. Like, that's a fact. The Mets want Pete Alonso back, but he wants him at certain cost. Obviously, there is no team in baseball that says, you know what? I don't care if I give 10 years to Diaz. Every team's going to have a set years and a set amount, but you got to deviate from that sometimes. And David Stearns is terrible at doing that. Like, he can get the market to dictate like he did Pete Alonso last year and get the bargain of a lifetime. But you can't do that all the time because you're going to lose more often than not.
You know what I just thought about? Just the parameters. This is Edwin Diaz's. This is why he opted out. This is his last opportunity at a major payday, and he is going to stick it out until the very end to try to get that payday. But he's also probably a guy that you can convince more so than others to take a deferred payment. If you're giving him that kind of money that no other reliever has basically ever seen, right? Besides him in his last contract, that like he's trying to maybe even break his own record here. Like he's the prototypical guy to say, hey, listen, all right, you're 32 years old. You want a 5-year deal. That's fine. If you're really holding out on a 5-year deal, we'll give it to you, but you have to take deferred payments. Yep. Just like the Mets just did with another bullpen arm with Devin Williams. This is a perfect opportunity to also set up a deferred payment method with Edwin Diaz if he's willing to do so. That's really the only way that I see the Mets budging on this type of scenario, is that if Edwin Diaz is willing to take some deferred payments onto this deal. David Stearns is going to push for, listen, I'll be straight up to just summarize this Edwin Diaz synopsis before we move on to a different topic. I think Edwin Diaz is going to sign a 4-year deal. I think he's going to sign a 4-year deal. Whether it's with Toronto, whether it's with the Mets, I do not know. That's probably dependent on the AAV, the deferred money structure, whatever. I just think that it would be in the Mets' best interest to set up a structure where he does get that deferred money. Now, listen, the Toronto Blue Jays could also set up the same structure. That's fine. I get it. It could be a 1-for-1. But I really do think that the market with these two towns, right? Blue Jays, Toronto, and New York, I think that he would probably choose New York. I would have to believe, at least. Like, you know, I could be wrong. I don't want to speak for him, but I think that the Mets have that favor, at least with the geographic location, over the Blue Jays in that regard. If the Blue Jays decide to go the 5th year, the only thing that the Mets can do is offer or try to offer a couple more $1 million on the AAV for the first 4 years and say, listen, we will try to mitigate that 5th year that we are not giving you by trying to give you a higher AAV. It's probably not going to equate to what you get in that 5th year, but I don't know. Taxes have a big deal about it too, right? The Canadian taxes, the New York taxes. I'm not sure the math. I'm not even trying to attempt that math on what the taxes look like between the two cities and the two countries at that. But it's just like, that's just how I see it playing out. I think that the Blue Jays, they understand that they have to overspend. And I think that the Blue Jays are in this mindset that they know that they have to overspend. They have to give the extra year just for a big enough free agent like Edwin Diaz to walk into their doors. And with what we're hearing right now with the reports, Rob, unfortunately, it feels like they're willing to do it. Yeah. If it came down to Toronto versus New York, though, Rob, I would have to imagine that Edwin Diaz is going to choose New York.
Like
that's what I'll say.
Like if there's the same offers out there for both teams.
If you have a $4 million offer worth, let's say, I don't know. I'm not gonna math it, but let's just say the Mets have a $4 million offer with equal value, but with deferred payments, versus the Toronto Blue Jays 5-year offer worth the straight up value, no deferred payments. I think he would take the deferred payments over going to Toronto. That might be wishful thinking. That's fine, but
it might be wishful thinking for sure. I think he's going to take that 5th year. I don't think, like, if he's looking for that, I don't think he's going to bother taking that deferred money if you don't have to be quite honest.
And that means that he said everything, and that would mean, I'm not going to try to pin this on him, but that means he did not enjoy being in New York enough. That means that the organization that the New York Mets fostered did not mean enough. It didn't. It
I mean,
did.
you say the same thing about Pete Alonso.
That's
Right?
fine. But the thing is that Edwin Diaz, Pete Alonso was also very adamant that he was going to test the market like that. You know what I mean? Pete Alonso was not shy to say, "Oh, I'm going to leave." He said that straight up after the last Miami Marlins series. I'm going to leave. So
Yeah, but I mean, I think what you just said is just being a biased Met fan. I don't think these guys have much emotion to teams. I really don't. The same thing goes for Pete Alonso. Like, Met fans are obsessed with the fact that everybody thinks that Pete Alonso is obsessed with the New York Mets. He's not. He had a 7-year offer a couple of years ago to take before he hired Scott Boras, and how's that worked out for him, right? He could have had that 7-year deal, and he did not. He said no to that offer from the New York Mets. I have no love for Pete Alonso with that. So everybody's like, "Oh, he wants to be a New York Met." Okay, if he did, he would have took that 7-year deal. He didn't do it.
So this is the difference, though, is that like, we're not talking about Pete Alonso. We were talking about this very situation last season with Pete Alonso because the Blue Jays were after him. Canada pays more taxes, more income taxes than the U.S. does. Mm-hmm. So unless there's some sort of like workaround, maybe that I'm not sure about right now, about how Edwin Diaz can have a U.S. tax income versus if he goes to Toronto and paying their tax system, I don't know. That's way above my head. But I'm just saying, I would have to think that's a big sticking point of these free agents not wanting to go to Canada is because they have a higher tax system than the U.S. typically does. And so that's what my mind takes me to, right? And so that's why I bring in the deferred payments. If the Mets want to sweeten the pot and say, we will go ahead, you can stay here in the U.S., keep the tax system. We will give you the same offered money value-wise with deferred payments rather than you go into Toronto and losing that value to taxpayer dollars, then that's fine. That's really the only reason that I can think of the two sides and the two countries here at play. Again, that goes over my head. I'm just speculating here, but I would have to think that if there's any loyalty, right? Because you also have brought this up too, Rob, about Pete Alonso and his loyalty to the New York Mets. Last offseason, this was a very big sticking point to Pete Alonso. Is he really the New York Met homegrown guy that everybody thought he was? That he loves this New York Mets organization as much as the media, as he said to the media. Edwin Diaz has told the media that he loves the New York Mets organization. Yeah. Obviously, money talks. Nobody's expecting for anything else to matter outside of the money. But what these players say to the media also matters at the end of the day. And so we'll see. If you have, and this is the difference here, this is what I'll end it with. If you have a similar contract structure with deferred payments and one less year to the New York Mets, but the same contract valuation remaining the same, but you choose to go for that extra year to Toronto, I'm sorry. I have to think that you do not value the New York Mets organization as much as you told the media you did. That's my assumption at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to guys who are in New York, I think they just say that to appease the fans sometimes and don't want to be hated on the fans and stuff like that. Diaz obviously lives and pitches off for emotion, so I don't know. Like it's look, if you combine the federal income tax and state income tax with New York, California, like it's gonna be over 50%. It's gonna be close to 50%. Because they're in the highest tax bracket, they're gonna be over 50%. Taxes are close to it.
And how much is it for Canada?
I mean, it's probably around 50%. So I don't think it's that much of a difference. Like I when you're making millions upon millions of dollars, I understand. If you go to Florida, you ain't paying no state tax, or Texas, you're not paying no state tax. Understandable, but again, these guys make so much money that if it was that much of an issue, you wouldn't see nobody going there at all. Like, yes, Toronto does have to pay a premium. That's why. That fifth year might be a sticking point because the Mets can give him 4 years in deferred money, but that fifth year at the end of the day might save him $10-15 million just based on the pure overall amount, even with the taxes in Canada. So That's also what you have to look at as well. And again, these guys have great tax guys as well that can finagle all types of tax, codes and all that stuff that they can look at to save them money in the long run. If you don't live a certain amount of time in Canada, you're not going to pay the tremendous amount of taxes. You're only going to pay for the 81 games you play there. So not 162.
So this is my whole point too, is that if you lose out Edwin Diaz to the Blue Jays, if it comes to this nitty gritty of taxes that we're talking about, is anyone really going to cry that we have Robert Suarez on the team as a pivot point? Nobody should be crying at that point then. That's a good fallback option.
Weren't we here on shows when Brandon Nimmo got traded? How did Met fans react? They're going to react ridiculously stupid. We talked about this on the other hot stove. We said this. There's too many Met fans that think if you don't bring back Edwin Diaz or you don't bring back Pete Alonso, that the Mets cannot win. It is a false narrative that David Stearns loves, or just the Mets organization loves to put towards their fans, and to think that pure emotion because of Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz, like it's the end of the world. Listen, is it a shock to the system if Nimmo, Diaz, and Pete Alonso are not a part of this team? I mean, talk about a core shakeup. That's a earthquake, right? And that would even shock me. But I think when it comes to the Met fans, they would not believe that this team can win without Edwin Diaz and Pete Alonso, or at least one of them here. Because I think some Met fans understand that there's a strong possibility that it's either going to be Edwin Diaz or Pete Alonso. There's a possibility that it won't be both. I think they can somewhat live with that. Like, I think if you poll Met fans, if it's between one, Pete Alonso or Edwin Diaz, I think Pete Alonso is going to poll a lot higher because people are obsessed with Pete Alonso and they think Diaz is, I think he's still, favorable among Mets fans. But Pete Alonso has a brainwash on his fan base for whatever reason.
And you know what? I think that because we're talking about payroll here at the end of the day. So we're like, I did a stream talking about how the Mets luxury tax payroll is already at just over $277 million after the Devin Williams signing. And we're talking about potentially another $20 million being allocated to Edwin Diaz if he comes back. Another, let's say $27 million for Pete Alonso if he comes back, if you bring those, those two guys back. That means you have to probably, because that's about $50 million on top of 277. Yeah, we're going over 300 plus for sure, but we're not going to be embarking on a $360 million payroll. I don't think we're going to be doing that. The Mets last year were at 337. There's a certain limitation after all this that a certain threshold has to be met. But what I'm saying is that I really do think that the answer to this depends on if you're able to strike a deal via the trade block for a payroll efficient pitcher that is under an arbitration year, let's say in 2026, whereas you have to allocate maybe a free agent year for one of these pitchers, right? We're talking about Framber Valdez and giving this guy $25, $30 million a year for 4 years, whatever. I think that this all coincides with one another. $277 million. You think about that. What is that? 337 minus 277. 87, 97, 207. Yeah, that's a $50 million right there, right?
Yeah.
That is like $50 million that you're playing with. So two guys, if you bring both Diaz and Pete Alonso back, that will take you to about 47 of that $50 million. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Well, unless you get rid of Senga's contract and McNeil's contract, then you have about $30 million to work with.
But you have to make those trades, and that's the thing.
But again, I think you got to take that into account because you're not going to get these other guys and keep Kodai Senga around or Jeff McNeil around, right? If you sign,
correct,
a couple of another position player, another bat with Alonso, let's say, McNeil is in no man's land. You have to trade him. So you're probably going to have to get a bag of balls, but at least the team would take on the money. And this is what we talked about this in the early hot stoves that, when we talked about, I think Kodai Senga should be more of a salary dump along with Jeff McNeil, to be quite honest with you, because of the fact that that's close to $30 million right there between the two that you can add onto your payroll with different players. And that's a huge amount of money, considering that if you want to keep around that 330 to 340 $1 million payroll, that's a lot of money to work with. So that's why I'm thinking that, like, that's why I said I thought McNeil or Senga would be traded before the winter meetings. Obviously, that's not the case right now, but I would be shocked if one of them are going to be traded by that time. And that's something that, that is $15 million, $14 million off the payroll right there. And that helps the overall, amount of money they could have to spend. Because again, there is a budget. Like, I know people are like, oh, let's go $500 million for a payroll. I mean, that's ridiculous at some point. I think they're probably going to be on around close to 340, 350. And if you really look at it, like Chris just said, where we are right now, payroll wise, that's still another, $80 million away, give or take, $60, $70 million right away. If you get rid of McNeil or Senga or both, that's closer to $100 million that you could work with. And, that's a lot of people to bring in. You can bring back Pete Alonso, Edwin Diaz. You can trade for a starting pitcher that might be making some decent money. You could do all that and still sign another pitcher as well. And that can relate to all $100 million that would add to your payroll. And now you're working with around $340 million payroll, and you're back to almost to where you were last year. And hopefully you have a better team. So it's a lot to look at because there's a lot of scenarios, a lot of possibilities when it comes to what the Mets can do with their payroll and how they're going to use this offseason to get to the payroll, where I think they're going to be a very similar payroll than they were last year. So it's going to be very interesting. And I'm watching MLB Network right now, and they're saying that the Reds are interested in Kyle Schwarber. That's his hometown. I see people in the comments saying that the Pirates offered Schwarber a 4-year deal. Did you see that anywhere?
I didn't see that. No, I didn't see that.
I mean, I have my phone charger right now, so I wasn't even paying attention to that. But if that's true, I don't think he's going to the Pirates, to be quite honest with you.
I don't think any of these guys are going to the Pirates because I think that they said that I forgot which insider said it, but that the Pirates were somehow lingering around in the Pete Alonso sweepstakes too. And I'm like, come on.
I mean, good for them if it's true. But come on, like, these guys are not going to Pittsburgh. They're not going to.
They're not going to Pittsburgh, man. Let's talk about Pete Alonso, Rob.
This is their final big deal. They're not going to Pittsburgh and lose.
Let's talk about Pete Alonso. We will talk about starting pitching. I think we should talk about starting pitching at some point. Let's talk about Pete Alonso because I just released a video on my channel a couple of hours ago talking about the latest report on Pete Alonso. This is where, Rob, I know this is bread and butter time for Rob right here. This is what he lives for. And you know what? Good for you, because you've been saying this all along, and you should take victory laps over this. Joel Sherman, in the latest report, basically saying that with who he's talked to, with some officials around the league and executives, whatever, that teams are hesitant to offer him a fifth year for sure, but maybe even a 4th year. Like, he would be lucky to get a 4th year, which is absolutely insane to me, because I don't know how other teams value Pete Alonso. I know how Mets fans value Pete Alonso, and it's certainly looking like, with the market right now, that Mets fans are overvaluing Pete Alonso versus what other teams are valuing him at. But I think with what he posted in 2025, it would be absolutely insane if he did not land a 4-year deal somewhere. I think his best bet to land a 4-year deal is with the Red Sox, because that's the only team around the league, given the circumstances, maybe they're able to go ahead and find a trade partner of Tristan Cassis, whatever. I think that is the only team that could be strong enough to offer him a 4-year deal. I would hope that the Mets would match it, because, again, I don't have any problems with Pete Alonso coming back to this team. We also have to talk about this, Rob. Alongside why Pete Alonso has such a low market, we all know the defense isn't there. Come on. Like, it's a big sticking point. We can argue it back and forth all day long. He's a serviceable defender in terms of just being out there for a body, right? In terms of Kyle Schwarber. My whole thing is this, and this is what I want to ask you, right? Because I cannot make sense of this at all for myself. Why would teams be lined up to pay Kyle Schwarber 4 years with off the bat, no questions asked? Yes, he's put more home runs over the fence on average over the past 4 years than Pete Alonso. But Kyle Schwarber cannot play defense at any position. Pete Alonso, at least, albeit not a good defensive first baseman, he could still play first base, at least for the first year, 2 years of his next deal. So why are teams willing to pay 4 years, maybe even 5 for Kyle Schwarber, but they're not even entertaining that for Pete Alonso? That's my first question, right? And second question is, if Pete Alonso's not a New York Met, who is the next first baseman come opening day of 2026 for the New York Mets? Because I can guarantee you this, it's not going to be Ryan Clifford. He's not going to be ready, and that's a big gamble to take if you are trotting out a lineup that has Lindor and Soto right there on a win-now team. I think, and this is where I'll bring my assumption in, we can talk about this, Okamoto was not listed as one of the Mets fits. We know that the Mets are also interested in on Schwarber. They're in the mix. How serious they are, we don't know. Whatever. But I think that Okamoto is the best bet to try to backfill first base if you don't go get Pete Alonso, if you don't go get a Cody Bellinger type, because I think that Cody Bellinger is well on his way back to the Bronx, if I had to guess. I think that it could be a possibility.
Oh, it's a possibility for sure.
But like, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't see how the Mets are not in on Okamoto's market this offseason if they choose to forego the market of Pete Alonso. So that's my 2 questions. I just do not see what the first baseman situation would be like if the Mets let Pete Alonso go. Really, I don't.
Yeah, see, there's something, the first question, like, there's something that we don't know that is going around the league that other teams know, including the Mets, about Pete Alonso. Because this year doesn't make sense. Why his market is basically the same as last year. Last year we had understanding. He had one of his worst seasons in his career, and he had a qualifying offer attached. So you understand there was 2 things there that could stop teams from, giving him a big deal. What is it that he had a great year this year, and there's no qualifying offer? There should be more teams after him. Even if there's a team out there that wants him to be a DH, there should be teams out there. So there's something that we don't know, and I'm just saying fans in general don't know about what the league knows about Pete Alonso. And this whole concept of, we've talked about this, it's got to be clubhouse related. That's the only thing I can think of. And I know everybody's like, oh, well, Pete Alonso's a nice guy. Look how he is with the media. Doesn't mean he's like that behind closed doors with his teammates. There is something, it has to be clubhouse related. I know that's far-fetched, but there's something that we don't know, that we don't have no inkling of, that is known around the league. There's something going on. And I don't think we're ever going to know, but it has to be clubhouse related, because it ain't baseball related. I don't think there's anybody out there that can say that, there can't be every team in baseball, or at least most of them, that think that Pete Alonso is going to break down in 3 years. Like, I have that inkling he might, but you can make him as a DH. Like, it's not the end of the world. You could still give him a 5-year deal and still DH him in the later part of that contract. I just don't know. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm not the biggest Pete Alonso fan. I've been telling people this for 2 years about what's been happening with Pete Alonso around the league. People don't think the same way as Met fans. They overvalue their players. And I said this for a while. I'm not going to cry if Pete Alonso is not a New York Met. But I've also said that the best Pete Alonso will be a better Met than anywhere else. I've said that many times. So I just don't know what it is. But it's something that we don't know, that we don't have firsthand knowledge of, that is known around the league about Pete Alonso. They're not afraid of Scott Boras, because Scott Boras is getting big deals for other players. Look at Dylan Cease. Like, Dylan Cease is not even the best guy on the market, and he got $200 million. So it's not teams shying away from Scott Boras. They're shying away from Pete Alonso. And why is that? It's not the production. It's not the defense that the metrics show that he's not a good defender. I don't think it's all that, because you can DH him. There's something else going on. And the only thing I can come up with is clubhouse related. That's it.
Going back to the Kyle Schwarber thing here for just a second, Ken Rosenthal just tweeted out 25 minutes ago that Pirates did make a 4-year offer to Kyle Schwarber. So that is confirmed by Ken Rosenthal.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so that is confirmed by Ken Rosenthal.
Pirates, Pete Alonso, and Schwarber, baby. Oh, shit. Now it's fun to go to PNC Park. All right.
Well, it was fun when we both went this past season.
Yeah, the games.
Minus the games, right? When the Mets got their face kicked in 2 of the 3. But I will say this. A lot of people are saying, why would the Mets, because I said, who's going to be the backup to Pete Alonso at first base if he walks, right? Versus Kyle Schwarber. I know, I'd take Kyle Schwarber's bat. I'm not questioning that. First of all, if anybody's questioning whether I want Kyle Schwarber on this team, you must have not been paying attention to the streams that we did probably 6 months ago when I was already talking about this topic in season. I've been wanting Kyle Schwarber. But my thing is the glove. Who with the glove will be at first base? I don't care about the offensive metrics. I don't care who's replacing Pete Alonso in a bat scenario, because if you sign Kyle Schwarber, that's your Pete Alonso replacement in the lineup, right? That's your 1-for-1 Pete Alonso replacement in the lineup. But you still need to ask yourself who's playing with the glove at first base. Is Brett Beatty going to magically pick up a first baseman's mitt? Is Ryan Clifford going to magically be ready by the time 2026 rolls around? Are the Mets going to magically be in on the market of, Okamoto? That's my thing, is that we have to establish what the backup plan is if Pete Alonso leaves. If the New York Mets, let's say they do miraculously go out there and sign Kyle Schwarber, you are lacking a glove at first base. And who is that? Well, that is what the question is.
You know why I don't think there's a lot of information when it comes to the Mets and Okamoto? I think because I don't think Okamoto is going to sign until Murakami signs. And until Murakami signs, I don't think Okamoto is going to sign. I think if the Mets do lose it on Pete Alonso, I think Stearns probably thinks he's still going to be out there to be had, and he's a good defensive glove. He probably might not be the 40 home run guy, but he could probably hit 20 home runs in this league. And I said this many times, people are only focused on the production that you have to replace. You have to find the production to add that you lose from Pete Alonso. But as I said many times, you can do that with 2 players instead of 1. People seem to forget that idea. And I still believe that the Mets are going to get Bellinger if they don't get Pete Alonso. I said that for a while. I think that Bellinger fits the Mets like a glove. You can put him in the outfield, depending on what the rest of the offseason looks like. You could sign Bellinger, and you could sign Pete Alonso. That could still be a possibility. The Mets might get another deal of a lifetime for Pete Alonso and might end up getting him a 3-year deal. That's still on the table here. There is reporters saying that they wouldn't be shocked if Pete Alonso doesn't get the 4th year. It's a possibility. That's what I'm saying. That could actually happen. And the Mets can get a deal of a lifetime. Yeah, you might have to give Cody Bellinger a 5-6 year deal, but there's teams willing to do that. Again, you got to ask yourself, why are they willing to give a 20? Bellinger, only a couple of years ago, was a disaster of a player. And now he's looking to get a 5-6 year deal close to $200 million. I don't think he's going to get $200 million, but he'll probably get $160, $170. So there's a possibility the Mets can come away with Bellinger and Pete Alonso, and they can get, really good deal for Pete Alonso, and it's a bargain. Or you can get Pete Alonso and Schwarber. There's a lot of options here that could happen, and that's why I think that David Stern isn't gonna force himself to overpay for Pete Alonso. And I think that the one thing David Stearns has done, he's figured out the Pete Alonso market. He's been an expert on that. There's no doubt about it. Nobody can say that, he's low balling Pete Alonso. There is no team in baseball that wants to overpay or even pay, market value for a player. They want to undervalue that market if they can. David Stearns, for some reason, has been hitting the nail right on the head when it comes to Pete Alonso's market again this year. Now, again, he could be totally wrong, and Pete Alonso can get a 5-year deal from the Red Sox, and so be it. But why would the Red Sox give him a 5-year deal if nobody's willing to give him a 4-year deal? You know what I'm saying? That's the thing. Like, I don't think Pete Alonso is going to go to Boston for 3 years because the Mets would do that, and he would just stay in New York. Like, he would. That's why I'm like, it's interesting to see the dynamic of the Pete Alonso situation. That's why I don't think David Stearns is worried about the first base situation at all, because I don't think anybody's like Schwarber's a different story. He's a DH, but any other first baseman on the market, Murakami, Okamoto, maybe even Bellinger for that matter. I think there's too many options that you could fit in that first base area if Pete Alonso goes. That's why I don't think David Stearns is too worried about it. I think he believes that Pete Alonso might be crawling back at the end of the day. But if it doesn't happen, there's options out there that he can pivot to, and it could be solid options, at least defensively.
David Stearns definitely did set that precedent with Pete Alonso last offseason that they were going to control his market, and he was not going to let Scott Boras and himself control the market for themselves. And I think that's what a lot of teams are also following suit onto when it comes to the Pete Alonso negotiation. So I still think that the one free agent that I've talked about at the beginning of the offseason, but I haven't really talked about recently is Alex Bregman, which also seems to be the guy that the Red Sox are either going to bring back or they're not, depending on Pete Alonso. It's just literally this waiting game, like I said, with the whole Diaz situation between the Mets and the Blue Jays, but with the Mets and the Red Sox, it's like, are the Red Sox going to make a competitive offer for Pete Alonso, or are they going to try to retain Alex Bregman, right? Both guys opting out of their deals that they signed, respectively. And I know last offseason, Rob, that you said you'd rather have Alex Bregman over Pete Alonso. Last offseason, I was very adamant, even after a down Pete Alonso offseason or 2024 season, that I would rather have Pete Alonso. Who would you rather have now that we saw the 2025 campaigns? Would you rather have Pete Alonso or Alex Bregman in this lineup? Because if you do go ahead and get Alex Bregman, you're basically essentially saying that Brett Baty is a trade chip because you have Marcus Semien now blocking second base. So that's what it is.
I mean, I don't think Bregman's an option this year, to be quite honest with you. But the reason why I said Bregman last year was the fact that I trust Bregman more. He's a better defender. And, who made the playoffs last year? Who actually performed? Pete Alonso played well in the postseason when he had chances. So I'm not going to kill Pete Alonso there. But Bregman's a champion. Bregman was the only guy to actually hit on that Boston Red Sox team this year in the playoffs. Like, I want guys like that. And that's the issue. That is, like, now I don't think Bregman's even an option this year. I think because of Brett Baty and his emergence in the second, in the middle of the year until the end of the year, and he showed something, especially defensively, that I think third base is kind of set when it comes to Brett Baty. Now it's risky, I give you that, but I think because you got Semien there, who's a Gold Glove second baseman with Lindor, and no matter if it's Pete Alonso or not, I do believe the Mets are going to have a very good first baseman defensively at first base. So that's where I think where right now, if you give me Bregman or Alonso, I think Alonso fits more, and I think David Stearns probably realizes that as well. But again, I think Bregman fit the team better last year because remember, nobody was talking about third base because of Mark Vientos. I was the one saying that I don't trust Mark Vientos. I didn't trust his bat. I didn't. I just think that nobody had a book on him, and he performed extremely well, and he gets credit for it. But he has to prove that he can do it in the next year and keep doing that and adjust. And that's why I thought Bregman was the better option, because I think you could have went elsewhere in other departments of the lineup to help out, to be quite honest with you.
Brett Baty, the same thing applies for Brett Baty, though. I mean, Brett Baty is going to be clear above and beyond the third baseman for the New York Mets come opening day
Yeah,
if
but
things
Chris, here's the
materialize.
difference. The question isn't about his defense, though. I think that's a bigger deal. Last year, we were talking about Vientos' defense. I think that's the bigger deal. I think that, and David Stearns talked about this. He even talked about it with Simeon when it says, we know he's not the same offensive player, but we know we're going to get the glove from him. I think David Stearns is going to talk the same thing about Brett Beatty. They believe his back can perform. They think that his back can perform the way he did last year, but we know the glove will be there. I think that's the difference.
And that's where I'll differ in saying that I don't care about the defense. I think that Brett Beatty can play a fine defensive job at third base. I'm very curious because we won't know. We will not know until 2026 comes around if he can replicate what he replicated in 2025 offensively. I'm not convinced that Brett Beatty will have the 2025 offensive year that he had in 2026, right?
I feel the same way. Like, I'm a Brett Beatty fan. I've been on his side this whole time, but I agree with you. Like, I wouldn't risk it. Like, if you're going to bring in Bellinger and bring back Pete Alonso, I think we can deal with Brett Beatty. I think we can, that's more than enough offense to, worry about Brett Beatty's offense. We don't have to worry about it as much. I mean, we would like him to give us 20 home runs, but I do think the defense will be there. I think that he's shown that he can play multiple positions and be a better defender. And that's why I think that there's less risk with Beatty playing third base right now, and they're not worried about that. There was concern about Vientos. We talked about it last offseason, or this offseason, or even during the season, or before the season started. Vientos' defense, it looked good, like when you watch games, but the metrics were bad, and he just didn't look comfortable, So I think that it's a little bit different with Beatty, not the offensive side. I'm just thinking about the defensive side. But I do think that, again, when David Stern keeps on preaching run prevention, I just feel like that's what they're worried about. And if the offense comes with that player, it's okay.
I don't know what we're going to get offensively from either of those guys. And I think Vientos being the guy that has the least positional versatility is a big problem, right? Because I don't trust in Vientos to be my DH. I don't trust in Vientos to be my backup plan at first base. That's not going to happen. If Pete Alonso walks, I do not want to see anybody say, oh, well, Vientos can play first base. No, I don't want him there. I'd rather him be off the team because I don't trust in Vientos being that guy with a lack of versatility and just not showing me anything. And Brett Beatty, I know there's a lot of fans, of Brett Beatty amongst his fan base, right? And that's fine because this guy, he's a homegrown Met. He's shown something, like he's had injuries plague him. That's fine. But I'm still also not going to be like 2025 is going to win me over and saying that he's going to be solidified as the third base of the future.
Yeah.
I could buy into the fact that the Mets start him off at third base in 2026 to see how he does. But you're not going to tell me that he's this guaranteed stud at third base because of what he posted in 2025. That's just not going to be the case. So that's where I stand on both Beatty and Vientos, quite honestly.
Yeah, Zig, let me see the comment. He did say something that's interesting. He's like, I think we go with Beatty, turn the corner like Nimmo did. Nimmo struggled initially, then he figured it out, and I think we saw the same with him this year. It's not a bad comment. Like, you could see the comparison there. Like, I don't think Brett Beatty, or maybe I'm not even gonna say no, because I think Brett Beatty was projected to be more of a power guy, more of a 25 plus home run guy, when he was coming up. And I do think he got sent down. He lost his job basically. And, still, how many home runs he hit this year? 20, 19, whatever it was.
18 to,
it was close to 20. I think he shows that power for sure. And, I'm not going to go on the route is that, he could be the Nimmo type of, trajectory. I mean, that would be great. And maybe the Mets are expecting it because they saw all that progress. And he could have been a guy that, put his head down in the corner when he got sent down and never been the same. And he came back and proved himself. And, the same people who said that, oh, Vientos deserves the shot he had this year, you can give Brett Baty the shot this year if that's the case. But yeah, I don't want to see. I think the Mets totally screwed up what they should have done with Vientos at the deadline. He still had value at the deadline. I don't think he has value right now. And that's the problem. The Mets basically screwed the value of their players. They screwed the value of Vientos, Mauricio, Acuna, not so much Brett Baty, because Brett Baty started to get more playing time because he was playing better. But those other three guys, they hurt their value. I don't think they really hurt Mauricio's value, because I think people believe it because of his injury the prior year that it might have an issue. But they hurt Acuna's progress, Mauricio's progress, and Vientos barely played because he sucked. So a lot of the value, I think, could have been used at the deadline. Why I think we shouldn't have this question of who could still be here in Vientos, Baty, Acuna, Mauricio, and we're still talking about it. And I think that's the other problem. Like, this is the problem. Oh, shoot, hold on. Kyle Tucker just signed with the Blue Jays.
Did he really?
Yeah, Tom Verducci it's on MLB Network. Kyle Tucker.
No way.
Blue Jays, yep.
We got reports?
That's what I just saw. And the Reds just signed Ellie De La Cruz to a 10-year, $350 million extension.
No way.
I just saw it. I was like, wait a second, is that true? He said Tom Verducci just said that the Blue Jays signed Kyle Tucker. Whoa. I think
I'm not seeing any passing bomb or anything.
All right, because they just said that. Like, I swear I just saw it on MLB Network.
All right. Well, Wilfredo and BBA, they got big heads, so they got to figure this out in the chat.
Yeah. Help us out, guys.
They got some big heads.
My phone died on me and it's charging.
They got big heads behind that screen.
Like, I literally just saw it pop up, and I'm like, what? Wait, what happened?
No, I don't see anything about Kyle Tucker.
So maybe it was something about Tom Verducci saying that he would.
It's not confirmed for sure.
Okay, I do apologize for that. I just saw it real quickly. All right, it was a prediction. Okay, sorry guys, I have it on mute.
You scared me, dude.
No, because like they just put like,
you scared me.
Like one of those like tags on there, like Kyle Tucker signed to Blue Jays, and I'm like, and it was Tom. I'm like, okay, Tom Verducci reported, but okay, I had it on mute. I'm sorry, guys.
BBA's big head was thinking that was real, bro.
All right, I apologize. I just looked up and I saw it, and I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? Like, cause I didn't see nothing. Cause I have Twitter up right now and I didn't see anything. So I'm like, whoa. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I don't believe the Mets are ever going to get Tucker, so it wouldn't have been like a heartbreak for us if it was like Pete Alonso or Bellinger or Diaz or something like that. But yeah, sorry about that, guys. I'm sorry. I looked up and I saw Tom Tucker signs with Blue Jays. I'm like, where did that come from? I didn't get no notification at all. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
You had me surprised. You had me worried, honestly, Rob.
I was surprised.
I was rushing to the next tab.
Like, they just ended the MLB Tonight Show, and that was what popped up. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, come on. I'm sorry, guys. I apologize. That wasn't like a clickbait. I truly saw that, and I'm like, because I have it on mute, so I didn't hear what they were talking about. So I do it. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
Crazy.
Tucker is a free agent, guys. You guys are just not listening. Now you want to listen to me?
That's crazy. You were just making sure that everybody was paying attention on the
stream. After this whole Sunday football day, yes. I was making sure everybody was on their feet on day one of the winter meetings. It was an arson judge. I'm sorry. It's an arson judge. I'm so sorry. That kind of like threw me off guard. Like, I was like, what the hell? Like, nobody said nothing in the chat. Usually somebody says something when we're live. Hey, look who just signed. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, but nobody said anything. That's why it caught me off guard. It's like, wait a second. You guys in the chat are usually popping up with the things that are breaking. All right. Let's you want to talk about the pitching since
we should probably talk about the pitching a little bit. I would say the biggest thing with the pitching in relation to what we've already been talking about this whole offseason is that A lot of people are going in on you in the chat, dude.
It's fine. I go on me, man. I'm sorry. Like I have it on mute. I just didn't know. Like I didn't hear nothing. I didn't know they were doing predictions. I just saw it pop up on the screen. Like I'm reading it. I just read what I said. What I read. It's not like I had it on, of the volume up, and I knew they were doing predictions. What the hell? I don't know. It just popped up. That was a bad job at MLB Network.
At least you didn't say that none of those names was going to the Mets, though.
Yeah, I would have been screwed. I would have went offline.
Listen, let's talk about Tarik Skubal, bro, because I released a video. I actually released 2 videos on my channel today. If you haven't seen it, check it out in the description of my stream below. I talked about Pete Alonso and the update about the market and the lack thereof of market for Pete Alonso. And I also talked about Edward Cabrera, and I talked about Tarik Skubal. Tarik Skubal, apparently, according to Buster Only, of the executives that he's hearing from around the league, Buster Only is Buster Only. We understand that. But that a lot of people do expect that the Detroit Tigers are putting Tarik Skubal on the trade block. And so I know you feel very strongly about Skubal. This is the 1A guy that the Mets really have to go out there and get, right? No matter what the cost is, no matter what the value is of the contract extension that he's looking for, you have to go out there and get this guy in the doors for 2026. Now, and this is where I want you to take a couple minutes to expand on your reasoning to talk about, because there's a lot of Mets fans that I've seen saying, you will trade for Skubal. You could trade for Skubal. You could give up a plethora of assets for a rental, whereas you could just sign him the next offseason to a mega deal. That's where a lot of Mets fans are hung up. Why trade the prospect capital for a guy like Skubal versus just going after him in free agency next season? Now, I'm in line with you. I think we both are in line for the fact that the Mets should definitely trade for Skubal, because there is no chance that Steve Cohen and David Stearns trade for a guy of the magnitude of Tarik Skubal and let him go out the door to anybody else without getting an extension. And let alone the fact that these players are going to want to get the contracts in before the CBA negotiations kick in next season. Because we don't even know if we're going to have a 2027 MLB season with the owners going up against the Players Association on a plethora of different problems, right? And issues that they're voting on. So, Rob, let me know about Tarik Skubal. Buster Only seems to be hearing that Tarik Skubal is going to be dealt this offseason. Do you buy that, first off? And second off, do you think the Mets are the favorites to land him given the circumstances?
Favorite, they should be. They have the prospects to do so. I do agree that, with a Buster Only, I do think the Tigers will trade him. I think it's stupid to keep him, knowing that they're not signing him. They were so far off in contract offer or years in money that they're not signing him. Like it would be stupid to keep him for the year without getting something for him, because I think you're going to lose value or lose the potential of a big prospect package even at the deadline. I think you're going to lose some of that. The Mets should be the favorites. I said this from the beginning. If Skubal is available, and if Skubal is traded, he better be a New York Met. He cannot go elsewhere. I don't care where it is. He cannot go elsewhere. People are going to complain about he's a rental, blah, blah, blah. So, but people have no problem bringing in Freddie Peralta, who's probably going to cost 2 prospects anyway. He's still a rental as well. So the logic makes no sense. If it's between Peralta and Skubal, I'm going with Skubal. He's the better pitcher. That's it. It's just that simple. Like, this is where I continue to talk about Met fans that I don't think they truly want to win. I think they're so obsessed with these prospects. For what? Jonah Tong is not a major league pitcher right now. We need major league pitching. We do. Like, stop talking about Jonah Tong until he develops a third pitch, or even a secondary pitch for that matter. He's not a major league pitcher right now. Stop worrying about, if you don't want to trade Jonah Tong, seriously, look in the mirror. You don't want to win. We're going on 40 years of not winning the World Series, guys. Skubal gets us closer to that. Jonah Tong does not. Not right now. Not right now. I'm sorry. McLean is the only untouchable. There should be no reason why you can't trade anybody to get Skubal. He's the best pitcher in baseball, by far the best pitcher in baseball. He would be a New York Met for 2026. Stop worrying about 2027. Stop worrying about 2028. As Chris just said, the CBA is up. There might not be no season in 2027. Stop worrying about that. If Skubal is available, the Mets need to get him. It's just that simple. Because if you go second fiddle and you go the B route, and I'm not saying it's a bad route, but everybody acts like you're going to get Freddie Peralta for a bag of chips. You're not. The Brewers are probably going to ask for two prospects. So what is another 2 to get a better pitcher than Peralta? I'm not saying Peralta is going to be a bad option, but let's not act like Peralta has 3 years left on his deal. He's a free agent as well. If it's between, okay, the Mets are going to trade for either Peralta or Skubal. They're both free agents at the end of the year. I want Skubal. To be honest, the Mets should get both. But I know they're probably going to trade for one, most likely, and sign one, most likely. So I understand that. I'm not going that crazy there. I'm not saying trade 7 out of your top 10 prospects to bring in Peralta and Skubal. I'm not saying that. But this is the issue with a lot of Met fans. They're obsessed with these prospects. Why? Like, the majority of them don't have a spot currently on this team. And some of them aren't major league ready yet. Like, how many more years are we going to hear about Jet Williams? He's not ready. Jonah Tong, not ready. Ryan Clifford, not ready. AJ Ewan, not ready. Santucci, not ready. There's a lot of these guys that are not ready. We got to stop with, let's not trade this guy. I mean, I just don't get it. The best pitcher in baseball would be a New York Met. You will not care who you gave up if he's striking out 12 in a big game for us in September. You're not going to worry. Trust me. You're not going to care. And you know what? He's going to, clearly, if they trade Skubal, they're probably going to start somewhat of that rebuild. Not a rebuild, but a transition. Do you really care what the Detroit Tigers do in the AL Central? Let them beat up American League teams. Great. Jonah Tong might be great. He's going to be, you know what? If he's great in 6 years, you sign him. Like, I just don't understand the logic. Worry about what this team's going to do in 2026. Too many are falling for the trap of what's going on later in life. Who cares about 2027, 2028? Worry about that when it comes. And for all the people that say, well, the Mets should just sign Edwin Diaz and Pete Alonso. They got the richest owner in baseball. Why not use that logic for Skubal? Why would you think Steve Cohen would let Skubal go, including David Stearns for that matter, after giving up that prospect haul? Now, I'm not telling you that Skubal's going to like New York. He might pitch well and just doesn't like the city, and there's nothing you can do about that. But you don't know that. Don't give me something that is not true or not. We don't know that. But what if he loves it here? You really think Steve Cohen is going to let the guy who's a New York Met, who's the best pitcher in baseball, go based on money and years? He's not. That's one guy you give a 10-year deal to or 8-year deal to. Like, we got to understand that, Chris. And I know you're on board with me as well when it comes to Skubal. There's not enough Met fans that want to be on board as they're talking about Pete Alonso right now on MLB Network.
It's one of those things where Mets fans get hung up in this process of, let's not give up the prospects now, because a lot of Mets fans are prospect huggers. Let's be honest. Like, we have one of, if not the best farm systems right now in baseball. And that has been building up since 2023. And that's also in part due to guys that have come up through the ranks that were not expected to come up as quickly as they have, like a Jonah Tong. And my thing is like, you get the proven talent any way you can, just like you were supposed to, like you said, with Garrett Crochet last offseason. But that was a different circumstance because that guy was kind of transitioning into a starting pitching role, didn't really have the background as a starting pitcher to kind of, I guess, go along with trading that many prospects, and the injury concerns were there. Tarik Skubal, you look at the body of work that he's posted over the last couple of seasons, let alone a couple Cy Youngs under his belt. What name in this organization outside of Nolan McLean would anyone even think about saying no to in a Tarik Skubal deal? I can't think of one. Nolan McLean is off limits, and I think everybody else is on the table. Now, clearly, there is a threshold of saying no, right? There is a threshold of saying no. If these guys want Carson Bench, Brandon Sproat, Jonah Tong, Jacob Reimer, et cetera, like, yeah, there's a certain point where you're like, all right, screw off. You know what I mean? But if there's a realistic package out there that includes 2 top 10 prospects, yes, they might be your 2 top 10 favorite prospects. I'm sorry, this is Tarik Skubal. This is a guy that will go out there and probably, given the offensive production, if it's there, give you a win every 5th day. And if you get to the playoffs, he will give you a really good start in the playoffs every 5th day.
I just want to, because I see people in the comments talking about the present and the future.
Of course.
Listen, if you give up you would think it would take 4 top 10 prospects to get Skubal. Let's just say that's the number.
I don't think it will, though. I don't think it will, though.
Let's just say.
I don't think it will.
Does anybody really believe that the Mets farm system is going to be a complete disaster after you give up those players? It's not. Let's say you got to give up Jonah Tong. Let's say you got to give up Jet Williams. Let's say you got to give up Ryan Clifford and Benj. Let's just say that. That's it right there, right? Let's say you find a way to keep Sproat. You still got another top prospect pitcher still there. And you still got Ewan, you still got Mauricio, you still got Santucci. You got more than enough guys in your farm system that some might be here very shortly and some that might be a year or 2 away. So you're not jeopardizing your future. And I ask everybody again, if everybody wants to sign Pete Alonso back and Edwin Diaz back, these guys aren't 25 years old. You can't tell me you want to sign these guys back. And Lindor's over 30 years old now. You know, these guys are getting older. Your core is getting older. If you bring back Pete Alonso, Edwin Diaz, and yes, Juan Soto's under 30 years old, but these guys are older. So you want to bring these guys back, but you don't want to do everything you can to win. Just like everyone's like, oh, well, does Skubal give us a better chance to win the World Series? Yes. What killed us last year? Pitching.
Can I say this?
Yeah.
This, because I think this is from a realistic perspective, this is like what we have to go off of. Let's compare this deal to what Garrett Crochet, the situation with Garrett Crochet was last offseason. Unlike last offseason with Garrett Crochet, the Red Sox were in the driver's seat. Mm-hmm. They had the clear and above best chance prospect-wise to get Garrett Crochet. And they gave up the necessary prospects to get Garrett Crochet, right? There is not one single team in this league outside of the New York Mets that are the front runners that have the prospect capital to give up a deal. The New York Mets are one, and I can't even think of a distant second, that have the prospect capital to give up for Tarik Skubal. And so the reason why the New York Mets didn't do that last offseason, and I know that Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams combined were the sticking point, and David Stearns was kind of unwilling to do so. And the Red Sox actually made it happen with their top prospects. This season, this offseason, it's different, right? The Red Sox made their prospect acquisition, the big prospect acquisition with Gary Crochet. This is the Mets. If Tarik Skubal is out there for the taking, right? On there in the trade block, this is the New York Mets trade to lose, because I am not going to concern myself with Steve Cohen as my owner. Just like I did not concern myself with Steve Cohen as my owner when the New York Mets made a trade for Francisco Lindor and they needed to extend him before the season began, and they did so, albeit at the last hour. I'm not going to concern myself with saying, I'm not going to trade for this guy because I can just sign him the next offseason. Things are going to change, ladies and gentlemen, with the CBA negotiations. There will be free agents that are in line for a huge mega contract that will want to sign before the lockout happens. I'm sorry to say. And Tarik Skubal, I think, will probably be one of those guys. This is why you make this trade happen. Now, there are limitations. I don't think the Mets are going to need to give up the 4 names that you just said, Rob. I really don't. Because I do not see another organization giving up enough prospects that will match the names that you just said. So I don't even think that it'll take the names that you just said to make this deal happen. But also, at the end of the day, we have to understand, when we take a look at Tarik Skubal, Freddie Peralta, and whoever else, I know that there's conflicting reports about the Twins and Joe Ryan. We don't know if the Tigers, at this point, the latest report says that the Tigers will likely trade Skubal, but it's not a guaranteed, they're willing to offload him. It makes sense for them to do so, but they could ride into the 2026 season with him being under contract and then letting him go at the deadline, which would be detrimental for them in terms of the actual prospect return, which I don't understand why they would do that, but it's not a guarantee. So that's why the Mets are weighing their options of, what the Marlins situation is, what the Brewers situation is, etc. But if there's a deal out there, I think it's more so in line of let's say, I don't know, you give up Jonah Tong, you give up a guy Benjamin Clifford, 3 top 10 prospects, not 4. Plus maybe an MLB ready guy like Vientos or Mauricio. You pick one of those guys. It's not going to take the whole thing, the whole farm, to make this deal happen. You have to make it happen, man, because I'll tell you this, and this is the reason why, unfortunately, is that as much as I'm a David Stearns supporter, is that David Stearns put this team in a situation the past 2 off seasons to do this, right? Because he did not get a frontline starter in the past in the past 2 times, right? That he was able to do so.
Yeah, and people keep on talking about, why don't you just pay him after next year? Fine, but you don't know that. What if he?
No, yeah.
What Correct. If he goes to, I don't know, pick a team, whatever team it is, and what if he decides, because by the way, guys, he was willing to sign an extension with the Detroit Tigers. That his agent is still Scott Boras. So if he's willing to sign an extension with the Tigers, why wouldn't he be willing to sign an extension for somebody who traded with them? Not saying that it would, but here's the other thing. The Skubal trade doesn't stop you from signing free agent pitchers. It doesn't. He's not making a lot of money right now for 1 year. You could still sign Framber Valdez. You could sign Suarez. You could sign Michael King. You could, and you know what? You might be able to trade for Peralta if you wanted to. I just don't understand a lot. It's Skubal is not stopping us from making other deals to make the rotation better. And if anybody believes that Skubal doesn't give us a better chance to win the World Series this year, and you're worrying about whatever stupid percentage you're talking about in the comments about future, none of these guys are proven. None of them. You can't tell me Jonah Tong is going to be Skubal or even half a Skubal in 4 years or in 2 years. You can't say that. Same thing goes for Sproat. Same thing goes for Benj. We don't know that. We don't know that. But you should be willing to do it for the best pitcher in baseball. That's it. And just sign Framber now and Skubal next year. You can still do both. That's the idea. You can trade for Skubal and sign Framber Valdez. It's not that much money to bring in both of them. It's not. That's what you guys just don't understand. You're not killing your farm system by trading for Skubal. You're not. Like I don't understand a lot of
Which team has the best farm system though? As Jeremy's saying, which team right now has the best farm system?
I mean, but it's not even about the best farm system. It's about what are the Tigers looking for, right? If you're trading Skubal, what do you think they want back? Probably top pitching prospects. Right?
Correct. Yes.
Like we all know, right? Boston might have had the best deal or the best farm system at that moment for Crochet, but it was what the White Sox were looking for. We don't know what the Tigers are looking for, but you just assume they're probably looking for top pitching prospects if you get rid of Skubal, right? I'm not a aficionado on what their farm system is with pitching or even their rotation right now, but you would assume that they probably would want pitching back. The Mets have 2 top pitching prospects that teams clearly want. We know people want Tong. I'm sure there's people that already saw Sproat last year and probably want him. You can't be against trading anybody except for Nolan McLean or who nobody should be untouchable. You're not destroying your future. You got Soto here for the foreseeable future. Like, the issue that I don't understand with Met fans is that they want to bring back Pete Alonso. They want to bring back Diaz. Guys are over 30 years old that maybe have 3 years left of their prime. You want to win with them. You can't bring Pete Alonso back and Diaz back and still have Lindor here. And the people who were crying that still wanted Nimmo here and think that these guys are going to be here in 6 years being at their best when maybe our prospects are going to be good. The fact is you want to win with Lindor here in his prime, with Soto in his prime, with Alonso if you keep him, and Diaz in their prime. That is what you're trying to do. You're not waiting until they're all 37 years old, past their prime, and hopefully these prospects are good. It's just dumb. Again, too many people are thinking it's stupid to trade for Skubal. Then you know what, guys? Don't trade for him. Wait for Tong to come up here in September and hopefully develop a third pitch. Hopefully Sproat is good. Hopefully McLean doesn't take a step back. You know what? Get Peralta. You know what? Let Frankie Montas pitch left-handed. I mean, everybody would be excited because these are the same Met fans that didn't want to trade Vientos last year, Beatty last year, Mauricio last year, Acuna last year. And how the fuck did that turn out for us? You had them all on the roster. How did that work for us, ladies and gentlemen? How did that work for us? Because all of that nonsense that you didn't want to trade last year led us to 83 wins. The reason why we didn't get Garrett Crochet was because you didn't want to trade any of those guys. You got them all on that roster. Everybody was excited about those guys. And then look what happened. You didn't have no fucking pitching. You had no ace. And you fell for the stupid trap that David Stearns basically threw out the fishing line and you all went after it. And you're going back to the same nonsense again this year. Because when Tarik Skubal gets traded and he's a Toronto Blue Jay or a Boston Red Sox or a Yankee or fucking Phillies, you never know. And now you don't have him. And then the same people that didn't want to trade for Skubal are going to bitch that Framber Valdez is here at 32, 33 years old and he gave him a $200 million contract. There's no reason why you shouldn't have him. You got to stop. If you're not going to be excited about the best pitcher in baseball being a New York Met, 1 year or not, because you're going to be the same fans that are going to be complaining midway through the season at the trade deadline if this pitching staff isn't good, and you're going to be crying for Skubal if he's not traded in this offseason. So stop it. Do you want to win or do you not? Because if you're going to talk about the future in 2029, then I'm not taking you seriously about winning. And the same thing goes for David Stearns. If he doesn't get Tarik Skubal and he goes elsewhere, then I got to question David Stearns. Really, his core of does he really want to win? Because I'm sick and tired of losing. You guys have to be sick and tired of losing. The young arms are nothing. The young arms mean shit. And by the way, Nolan McLean, as much as I think he's going to be good, he's proven nothing. He's pitched, 11 games, and you guys are basically putting him in the Hall of Fame. You're calling him Jacob deGrom 2.0. Jonah Tong, the same thing. The guy doesn't have a secondary pitch. And you're talking about him not wanting to trade him? Brandon Sproat saw some signs of a good pitcher, but even he had issues. He didn't seem like he was all the way ready. And these are the guys you want to hold on for what? For what? For the hope?
I think
hope.
I think it's
emotion. Sorry, Chris. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's I think it's with what I see with the Mets fans, I think it's very evident that it is contingent on the patience and the hope of the Mets farm system coming to fruition to a point where all of these guys are going to be contributing at the major league level on the same roster. And the fact of the matter is that the Mets have an excess of talent, whether it is, farm system talent or MLB ready talent right now. And that there is, regardless of who your favorite names are, there's talent, there's excess talent at multiple positions that there is a direct capacity to definitely trade off of. And I think you can use that excess capacity to trade for a guy like Skubal. And so, like I said, I understand being smart about trading for Skubal, right? And not trying to give up too much because of the way the Mets farm system is right now. But at the end of the day, I really don't think, like, when it comes to Tarik Skubal, I don't think there's anybody off limits in this deal or hypothetical deal between the Mets and the Tigers to get this deal done outside of the name of Nolan McLean, right? Whatever you have to do, go ahead and get it done, because a lot of Mets fans are scared if the Mets do this deal for Skubal that he's going to walk in free agency next offseason. And I just don't think that's the case. I think that Steve Cohen will get the deal done, will get the contract extension done, and that's your ace. That's really the bottom line. So we'll see what happens, man. That's really all I have to say about that. And somehow we're 2 hours on the stream. That's a lot of Mets talk for tonight.
Yeah. Listen, guys, it's like you can say whatever you want about these prospects. I've been saying about prospects for years since I started this channel. I've been complaining about prospects. You keep on worrying about prospects, you're gonna keep on losing. All right, I'm not saying to get rid of everybody, but you know what? The same people that didn't want to trade all these guys that were on the roster in Vientos, Mauricio, Acuna, Beatty were the same ones that were crying that didn't want to trade these guys. And it ended up being a complete disaster. You didn't get Crochet because Stearns was crying about prospects. And that was a guy that was under control. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, you know what? Let's just punt on the 26 season. Like, why not? Don't even have a season. Like, if you want to wait for these guys for 2026, 27, 28, 29, then don't even play. Don't even bother. Let's just let them all develop in the minor leagues and get all excited. And you just waste years. You just waste years. This team needs to win. All right. I'm sick and tired of it, because when these guys are ready to play and be on this team, you'll have Lindor at 35 years old. You'll have Soto in 31, 32. You have Pete Alonso, if he's here, 34, 35 years old, going out of their prime. Like, it's just crazy to me. The guy's the best pitcher in baseball. You're going to have him for at least 1 year. 1 year. This is not the Wilpons trading for a guy like that, and you worry about re-signing him. You got the richest owner in baseball, guys. Like, understand that. It's just silly to me. But again, guys, it's day one of the winter meetings. Nothing really happened. And again, this happened last year, Chris. We stopped the stream and somebody signed. Yeah, buddy. I'm sorry.
No, it did happen, and it could definitely happen again. It's 9:30 p.m. Day one. I think we'll see a lot of meaningful signings here in the next couple days. There's a lot of markets we haven't even talked about, like Kyle Schwarber and stuff like that. I'm sure we'll talk about that again on another stream. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the plan is here. Should we do another stream tomorrow, or is that too far fetched?
I think we should. I mean, if we can, we do a stream throughout the winter meetings.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm down for it, because at this point, like, schedule permitting, there's going to be moves that are going to happen, right? Like, these markets are going to take off, and with what we've seen so far with these reports that, Schwarber is generating interest from a whole lot of teams, Mets, Phillies, Pirates, Reds, whatever, there's something that's going to go down. So I can't wait for it. This was just like an introductory kind of stream to what we can expect for the winter meetings. And I wouldn't be surprised if we literally end this live stream and there's something that goes down, but that's not within our power. So we'll see you all in the next live stream. And I think that there's just a lot of different scenarios, like we've both said, like on all fronts. There's a lot of different scenarios. A lot of Mets fans, what I like about this is that a lot of Mets fans have their own opinions. Having your own opinion and disagreeing with Rob and I is perfectly okay. Like, we welcome that 100%. If you do not agree with us, we could care less. There's a lot of different ways to go about building this roster, and that's the most important thing. And so there's no one size fits all. There's no one end all be all this offseason. And especially when you have a team that's coming off of a non-playoff appearance, right? That should have definitely made the playoffs. Everything and anything should be on the table. And so that's the most fun thing to talk about right here, as it pertains to shaking the core up and getting impact players onto this organization. So as always, let's go Mets. I appreciate you all being here. And that's all I got, man.
There you go, guys. So day one of the winter meetings are in the books, at least for us. There will be a sign-in for the Mets, because David Stearns likes to sign guys after 10 o'clock at night and in the middle of the night while I'm sleeping or at work, and I got to go to work in like a few hours. But again, guys, we'll see you tomorrow and the next night for all the winter meetings. And hopefully we come out of this winter meetings excited, because remember, at the start of the winter meetings last year, we landed Juan Soto, and the rest of it wasn't very good. But hey, it is what it is. So with that said, another hot stove in the books, guys. Let's go Mets. David Stearns, let's do what you got to do here. Surprise us all and make things happen. Have a great night, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Let's go Mets.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the